This kid, dude. The good players are telling you your dog you need to switch heroes. Shut up! You're still talking.
As some of you guys probably know, from time to time I subject myself to torture by playing a horrible game called Overwatch. And in a recent match I was in, man did I have an interaction that got pretty spicy. Okay, now firstly, I want to set the scene, okay? Ranked Overwatch in Australia is a slightly different beast. If you're American, you probably don't understand. I've VPN'd to the US servers a few times. You guys are complete softies compared to the dredges of society that linger in the OCE servers.
But I really like the OCE region. It usually goes like this, right? Good gaming for a bit, good comms. Then someone gets really upset, drops a few racial slurs, and then they ask me, why don't you stream on this region anymore? I'm like, I don't really know, man.
So, in this match, a couple of my teammates were kind of miffed at my performance on Tracer. And I'll be honest, I hadn't played in a while, I was a little off my game, my play wasn't optimal, alright? So anyway, they start typing furiously, telling me to swap, right? And I replied a little snarkily, okay, sue me. I said something like, you're dumb, I'm not swapping to Reaper, they have Diva, Widow, Hanzo, there's Defense Matrix in the front line, and I won't get anywhere near the back line without getting one shot. So long and short of it is, my teammates are mad, and we end up losing. And yeah, partly because I'm playing kinda bad. But look, it's a team game, it's not all on me, okay? Now for me, this was just like any other lost game, you know, it kinda sucked, I was a little frustrated, but for those two guys, they didn't just lose the game. They lost their minds, and it all starts coming out the usual. The gamer words, the slurs, the telling me to kill myself, calling me silver bordered trash who's worthless at life and will be forever hard stuck Diamond Peak. So I was like, damn, these guys must be pretty mad. But we leave the game, and then the real spicy stuff starts happening. They both start spamming me with friend requests. And I was like, ooh, I think I know where this is going. I've danced this dance before. So I accept, and they start hurling messages at me. So as I'm, taking in all this abuse, I think to myself, this could be content. So, I start replying back, but more than that, I invite them to my group. It's one thing to type some heinous shit at someone that you can't see. It's another thing to have to speak to them through voice. So eventually, after a bunch of reluctance on their part, they invite me. Boys, I'm in. So we start, and things don't go well. It was looking inauspicious, to say the least.
This fucking kid, dude. Dude, you keep fucking talking!
Now, unfortunately, the recording didn't pick up my mic at all, which really sucks, because there was some kind of funny stuff there. But I'll try to explain things as best as I can and fill in the gaps. So to give you an understanding of the dynamic here, there was a main guy who turns out is apparently like a Grandmaster Smurf. Basically, he's really good at the game. And then the dude he was matchmaking with. And that second guy was simping really hard.
Ha, simp.
Which is appropriate, I guess, because the account is called e-girl.
It's because he's smurfing and people look at his stats and think he's cheating, so report him. Because you don't find games at 4.2. Shut up, you dumb!
Some of them
Shut
might even be like
up, you fucking yank!
I think a couple of them are not even level 100.
Even though at the beginning I was a little bit snarky and I may have said a couple of things that could be construed as basically just dickish jabs, on the whole though, what I tried to establish was like a calming presence. I tried not to fight them too much. I tried to give off like a zen vibe, maybe empathize a little, find some common ground, and then make my points. And you know what? Slowly, things start to turn around, they begin to calm down, and by the time we got to the end of our conversation, they were actually pretty apologetic.
Sorry for going you, man. See ya, man. Good luck in your games.
They acknowledged that maybe getting that mad and telling people to kill themselves over a video game, not a super cool thing to do. We joked around for a bit, and then they wished me well on my next games. Honestly, by the end, these dudes were reasonable, fine people. So, why am I telling you guys any of this? Well, besides being like content and an ego fluffer and maybe a bit of a funny meme, I've done this sort of thing before, and these sorts of experiences always reaffirm to me certain ideas about life and people that I think you guys would find interesting to consider. Firstly, that the average person is very capable of being reasonable, intelligent, and empathetic. I know that sounds kind of condescending for me to say, but I think some of us, and certainly I'm guilty of this, can sometimes forget that Especially in a one-on-one setting, if you come at them with the right attitude, people can be incredibly thoughtful and perceptive and open. I know in this channel I sometimes give a very pessimistic view of people, I'm always criticizing things, but I found that the problem often occurs when people start gathering in groups. That brings about a lot of issues, especially online. They start putting labels on things, they start getting tribal, and they start trying to fit in, they start circle jerking, and they start operating like sheep. But one-on-one, people are great. I've actually tried this kind of thing a few times in video games, when people are insanely mad at me, And when we actually get to having a conversation, if I myself am not overly emotional and I come at it with the right attitude, then by the end, they've always turned around a little. So I guess my first point basically is, don't underestimate the intelligence of people, that it can be worth the effort to try and understand them, to try and reach them, to have conversations. It just takes the right approach. So for instance, we recently had a family dinner where someone said something that was maybe a little bit insensitive or ignorant. It wasn't anything super bad, he's not a bigoted person, but another family member who took issue with that, jumped at his throat. And it seemed like they were more interested in beating him down or punishing him rather than actually getting him to understand. I know that it can feel good for some people to do that, but ultimately the outcome of that sort of punitive mindset is generally bad and counterproductive. Now, of course, there are limits to this, not everyone can be reasoned with, some things are not worth discussing, but I'm speaking in generalities. God, something that's becoming clearer to me as I get older is just how important a good education and having good parents is. I strongly believe that most people can rise or stoop to a level similar to which they're treated. You'll often hear in sport, like soccer for example, that when a young raw player is thrust into an environment with top senior players, they very quickly raise their game, they raise their levels. And I sometimes feel like too often in society, this principle is not considered or implemented. For instance, when growing up, like a lot of kids, I would sometimes ask my parents stupid questions, and they would respond in a way that I've come to realize is actually quite rare. They would take the time to explain and answer the question in a pretty thorough manner, no matter how dumb the question was. They wouldn't just dismiss me or give me a stupid, easy answer to satiate me temporarily. Maybe this is kind of unintuitive to think about it this way, but I do believe that in order to have an intelligent populace, the populace needs to be treated as intelligent. For example, something that always really annoys me about the presidential debates is how little policy talk there is. It's mostly posturing about who has better character. Well, that's apparently because that's what the masses respond to. But I think that's because that's all they're conditioned to respond to. It's actually really condescending in a way, to assume that no one should speak about the issues in any sort of depth. They're too dumb for that. I don't think the average person has to be an idiot, but if they're spoken to like they're an idiot all their life, then yeah, they're gonna be an idiot. I mean, I'm sure how media is structured in our society right now with the advertiser model and stuff has a lot to do with this, but anyway. Okay, I'm going too far off track. Okay, let's go to the second sort of concept I want to talk about, which is how many shitty situations and behaviors are at least in part due to like ego or self-esteem issues. Like the types of insults those guys were making towards me were pretty telling, because it was all related to my shitty rank mostly, which is fine, but not when you're that into it. Like you're obviously really mad. At that point, there's something more to this, right? As I said, turns out this dude's a Smurf. This was actually, in fact, his 40th Smurf account, which probably means he has at the very least 5 times as many hours as I do. He has a lot invested in Overwatch, and he's struggling to carry people that are 1,000 SR below him. That probably hit his self-worth kind of hard. When people yell projection, it's a bit of a meme at times, but I think in some occasions paying attention to the types of insults people bring out says a lot about them and the things they value, what they might be insecure about. So a lot of their insults are based around, oh, you play the game this much, but you're still at this rank. And the number one way you can understand where people are coming from is to put your ego aside and ask simple questions. So I said, yeah, I'm not that good at the game. I mean, this is a fun hobby of mine. I still try and win. But why are you this upset? And slowly it sort of became clearer that, well, it's because he couldn't carry a match that he would be expected to carry, given his playtime and supposed real rank. The insults they were making towards me were probably to some extent what they feared about themselves deep down. Okay, this wasn't meant to be like such a kumbaya video, like, oh, everything would get better if we were all just nicer and sat and talked to each other more. And there'll of course be plenty of moments where I completely flip and will think the average person is a goddamn idiot. But just thought I'd share some stuff that I've been thinking about that might be worth considering. That, you know, maybe don't underestimate your fellow man. Don't forget that as much as we'd like to categorize certain people and call them NPCs or whatever, that for the most part, people are fleshed out, complicated things, and that sometimes reaching out and having open conversations, extending a bit of charity, that can lead to positive things. There are limits to this, but it's worth a try now and then. And the final thing is, you know, maybe don't underestimate the positive influence you as an individual can have on those around you. And the more intimate the interaction, the better. That's why I wanted to get in voice with those guys. You know, you're rarely going to sway anybody significantly through game chat or Twitter or YouTube comments, right? And this is something I kind of worry about for the future, is people that are so-called terminally online, you know, the kinds of people who tweet like 300 times a day, you know, they probably have a very skewed view of the world and of interacting with other people. And that section of the population, these terminally online people, that's a number that's growing. But hey, this is another video for another time. I'm out. Hit the like and stuff, and apparently it's like a YouTube method now to say, oh, look at the percent of people that are watching my videos who aren't subscribed. Can we get that to a higher percent, please? So imagine, you know, I sold that really well, and subscribe if you're new. Anyway, see you next time. Peace.